Hi, my name is Lilia. We need to get more girls involved with the STEM fields in order to be equal participants in the future generation of innovators and leaders. I reached out to inspiring role models who are paving the way for women around the world to hear about what they had to say on closing the gender gap.
Sure. So I'm Natalia Szadkowski. I am a quantitative analyst slash researcher at Bank of America. My current responsibilities are sort of across all the products. We do a lot of efficiency improvements, machine learning type models, model calibration, the wide gamut of sorts for various stakeholders. Prior to that, I worked on the trading side. I was on the algorithmic trading desk, so I can speak a lot about sort of the women being the minority in the particular niche within finance. And actually, I started out as an undergrad. One of my majors was music, so I was doing something completely different. I did the math also, but pursued music, through grad school actually, and then I went back to my other passion and then took things from there.
That's really cool. I've heard a lot about like finance industry and like changing between different things in it and like.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess so we can get started with the 3 questions. So has your gender positively or negatively impacted your career, and if so, how?
Sure. I think net would be positive. As a female, as women in general, we perceive things differently. Everybody does. Every person perceives things differently. So we have a huge value add, to companies or to any sort of professional path, any employer. And we are able to see things from a different angle. We're able to see things outside the box, think creatively. And I think employers really look for that. So I think they want to expand or they want to diversify their positions, their teams, and they are looking for minorities, such as women, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, to help that cause. So I think net it's been positive. On the negative side, there's sort of these social clubs that sometimes form within teams that is a bit hard to get by. But I would say net is a positive thing. Yep, at least in my experience.
That's good to hear. That's good to
Yeah.
hear. Always good to get, little positive out of it and maybe get some girls inspired to go into the field knowing that, it can help them out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you might be aware, within finance, finance is pretty gender agnostic these days. It's very women friendly. I think trading in particular, algo trading, is one of those niches that are still sometimes like a fraternity or like a boys club. So while they're open, they say they want to open themselves up. Sometimes there's these sort of clubs that form inadvertently, oftentimes, that like, for example, like a golf outing or things like that, where women aren't necessarily interested in doing. So there's ways around it. So I can talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay. To the next question. What barrier do you think is the most formidable for women in closing the gender gap, and how do you think we can overcome it?
Well, that's a great segue. I think that barrier will be, these clubs that sometimes form within teams that focus on solely like male activities, and we can try to sort of golf. Women play golf, so that's maybe a bad example. But in my case, I don't play golf, or I've played very few times. My father does, but I do not. So, you can try to attend some of these events, and or you can plan other ones around it. So there's ways around it. But I would say these smaller circles that form sometimes within teams can be a barrier.
Yeah, and I guess it would be good if there's a way to like maybe, I don't know, have like activities or, not so necessarily like we have to change. Maybe we can get them to like change what they're doing, kind of get in, change
Yeah.
activity.
Yep, absolutely. So one example at this proprietary trading firm I was at, there was oh goodness, the basketball tournament, the big that they have, in March Madness. I took part in that. That was a very fun activity, but also the next thing we did was like women's soccer. So I had some some guys sign up for that, and it was kind of like a bracket thing. So there's ways around it, and we can definitely play around it and open up the circles, open up the boundaries, the walls. Yep.
Like that. I think it's a good point. Definitely something to be mindful of, because when the systems are set in place from a time when women weren't in them, it's, changing them around and working them around again a little bit to make it more inclusive.
Definitely.
So I guess the last question, what is your personal message to young women entering the STEM field?
Sure. My message would be to take on challenges. I think it's really important to be open to them, to almost want them and seek them out in a way, because that'll expand our minds. They'll expand the ways our solutions, the ways we think, and the values that we can ultimately bring to the table. So my word of sort of my one, or my main sort of idea here would be to not be afraid of these obstacles and challenges, whether they be field-based or whether they be gender-based, right? There's people out there that will definitely help you, and it's not as bad as some people think. So there's definitely a lot of progress has been made, and it's sort of it's become the not norm to see gender bias these days. So that's a great message, great story.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think most of the problem is just the idea that there's a problem. So people are afraid to go into something because they're afraid that there's going to get a lot of backlash, but we've definitely made a lot of progress. So it's not there as much anymore.
Yeah, and I think, as with yourself, you're involved in the STEM field. Now as opposed to say 50 years ago, there it's become so much more popular for kids, whether women, girls and boys, to start coding or take on science or engineering. It's become much more popular. So I think in our generation, or in my generation, I think you're a few years after me, but in my generation, it's already been sort of maybe not expected, but not unusual to happen. So
I think that's a very good point. Those are all my questions. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm just curious about you. You're how are you involved with the STEM sort of field? And I think you're into programming, right?
Yeah.
So neat. That makes me so happy, because that's a lot of what I do is programming in my current role, especially. So that's great to hear.
Thank you. It's been a lot of work, but it's been good. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of C+. On my side. In my current role, I do a lot of my the developing in Python. So I'm sure you've heard of it. It's an enterprise sort of. A lot of companies like it because it's object oriented, but it's also very very concise. So you don't need a lot of code to present an idea. So you might want to check it out too.
That's cool. I will do that.
Along with homework, along with other social activities that we're involved with. So
Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. Let me know if I can help any other way.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much.
Yep. Have a good Saturday. Bye.
Thank you too. Bye.